another reading. Secondly, happy Father's Day to all of you who actually are fathers, and also to all those who've acted as fathers in various guises, throughout their life. And that would apply whether you're a woman or a man, or however you described yourself. So once again, happy Father's Day. Today's reading is, well, it is what it is. It's called Boldly Breaking Cycles. I'm going to get right into it. So, as I said, welcome once more to another reading from the Science of Mind magazine, The Daily Guides, by Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson. Boldly Breaking Cycles. What does that mean? Well, the first quote is from Dr. Nicole Lepera, who says, "The truth is, when it comes to our relationships, we repeat what we experienced or learned. The truth is, when it comes to our relationships, we repeat what we experienced or learned." And that was from How to Be the Love You Seek. How to Be the Love You Seek. It's on page 17. The next quote actually is from, Science of Mind, Religious Sciences Declaration of Principles, actually drawn up by Ernest Holmes, the founder. And this is just one piece of it. And in this, he says, "We believe in the universal spirit, which is God, we believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which perceives and receives the direct impress of our thoughts and acts upon it. We believe in the healing of the sick and the control of conditions through the power of this mind." And that's one of the basic fundamental things that Science of Mind in particular and New Thoughts in general teaches. Reverend Raymond goes on to say, "Have you ever heard of the term generational curses? How would you explain it to someone who is not familiar with it? For those reading, or in this case, listening to this, who may not be familiar, general curses refer to generational traumas. As we know, there are all kinds of generational traumas, and he quotes a few: alcoholism, domestic violence of all types, and all other kinds of abuse that occur within families over generations, and hence the name generational traumas, generational curses." It says, "Have you ever thought about the generational curses of a country, an organization, or a church?" Excuse me, I am going to sneeze. Excuse me. Fortunately, I have tissues handy. It says, as Elanya Van Sant often says, "Let's call a thing a thing." In other words, let's not deny what's going on. Let's admit to it, whether it's on a personal level or on a bigger level, church level, country level, state level, whatever. Then he asks the question, do we believe conditions can be healed as Holmes stated? What conditions are we using this power to change? Are we so focused on changing things for ourselves that we've grown apathetic or indifferent toward the condition of others? Do we relegate them to their own devices because of the generational curse of rugged individualism? Or are we willing to learn a new, healthier way to be in relationship with ourselves, others, money, planet, the divine, for example? He says there may be many reading this month's guides or listening to this month's guides who are upset because of what I'm sharing. And yet, what I know is that comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable are equally necessary parts of our evolution and the creation of a world that works for all. Let's come together to break the cycles that do not serve the vision of where we collectively, as a movement and as people who care about others and as to where this planet is going. As I mentioned before, I don't specifically in my comments directly at people who are parts of the New Thought movement in general and Science of Mind in particular. Because, as I said yesterday, I know people who got no affiliation with us whatsoever listen to these readings. But the basic premise he's saying here still applies. Do we bury our head in the sand and deny things don't exist? Or do we take the bull by the horns and do something about it, either on an individual level or on a bigger level? For instance, there's lots of homelessness in the country, and some places deal with it by outlawing it, kicking people out, throwing them out of the town or the city or the village where they are and just denying them. And yet there's other places doing the exact opposite. They're not encouraging homelessness at all, but what they're doing is they are looking for ways to deal with it that are constructive and help the people who are homeless. As I mentioned a while ago that most people who were homeless did not choose to be homeless. Yes, there are probably some who did, but by and large, people don't choose to be homeless. People don't choose to live out of cars or whatever. They don't choose to have to live in shelters. And some places are doing what is, in their opinion, a good thing. They are creating affordable housing and helping homeless people to have the ability to move in there. Our society as a whole, and he brings this term in here, rugged individualism, pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. Well, it's all well and good, and some people can, but not everybody can. So I think what he's calling us to do here in the first place is admit that there's a lot of stuff going on out there that wouldn't satisfy some of the major prophets in history. And in particular, they wouldn't satisfy Jesus, who, in parts of the Bible, is saying, about when you fed me, you fed this person, or you denied me, you denied this person, separated the sheep from the goats. He's actually talking about helping others and not just him. So really, he's just standing there as a figure in history who's saying, hey, your job is to help other people. Now, a lot of people in this country don't believe in that. They believe everybody should stand up for themselves. But it's not always possible. Reverend Raymond here goes on and at the beginning talking about generational curses. A lot of abuse that goes on, even a lot of so-called crime, is the result of these generational curses. It's often the fact that an abuser is someone who themselves was abused. Does that make abusing right? No. Do we need to deal with it? Yes. But oftentimes just locking people up in prison is not the way to do it. If people have got mental issues, then we treat their mental issues. It's common sense, in my opinion. Now, I realize that's not an opinion that everybody shares, but I believe if somebody has a mental issue and they're doing stuff because of that mental issue, then the first thing you do is treat that mental issue and not just throw them in jail. In Charles Dickens' time, which was what, I guess it's almost 200 years ago now, it's over 150 years ago, they used to throw people in debtors' prisons for being in debt, which really doesn't solve the problem. The person to whom the debt is owed is not getting anything back. Society's not gained by having to support somebody in the debtor's prison. To me, it was kind of a wacky idea of, yes, they're trying to discourage people from getting into debt. I can see that, but it doesn't solve the problem, does it? But what can we do as individuals? Well, we can look around and see where we can make a difference. Some people are going to do it through prayer. You know, monks of all ilks and nuns of all ilks, not just Christian, but across the board. They do it by prayer. People in monasteries, they're doing it by prayer. But other people are doing it by their own activism, getting out there, stirring people up. Some of us do it by acts of kindness, as we talked about yesterday. So the bottom line is, in the first place, we need to recognize that there are problems in the world. As Lanya von Sant said, let's call a thing a thing. In other words, let's not deny that there are problems. And once we do that, once we admit there are problems, then we can take the next step of deciding what can we do about it as individuals and as a society. That's where I go with this reading. Is it what Reverend Raymond intended? I don't know, but it's my interpretation of it. So hope that helps. So today I actively do what is needed to break the cycles I engage in and those we collectively engage in. I'm calling a thing a thing. Today I actively do what is necessary to break the cycles I engage in and those we collectively engage in. I'm calling a thing a thing. Well, guess what? Because everything is interconnected. Human beings are interconnected. There is a group, human subconscious. You know, Freud didn't entirely agree with this, but Carl Jung, when he came along, proposed the theory that there was a group, human subconscious, as well as an individual subconscious mind. And most people would ascribe to that now. Therefore, everything that we do goes into this group universal subconscious, and it impacts the whole race. So when we do good stuff, it impacts the whole race. When we change the way we look at life, it impacts the whole race. So that's really all I've got to say. Once again, have a great rest of the day, a great rest of Father's Day. We just came back from our kids. We waited until our grandson and his girlfriend came, and then we had a little time with them, and then we left, and here we are back again, which was time well spent with our family, I thought. It's always good to keep those connections alive. So until next time, I will be back tomorrow at 5. Reverend Lisa will be back tomorrow around about 9 a.m. Central Time. And until tomorrow, namaste.